Airbnb. They promise comfort, privacy, and a place to call your own while traveling. But what if the comfort was just an illusion? What if someone or something was already waiting inside? Tonight, we're diving into 10 true Airbnb horror stories. Terrifying tales of guests who discovered that what seemed like a cozy home could hide nightmares they would never forget. From mirrors that watch, to secret keys, to hidden cameras. Each story is stranger, darker, and more disturbing than the last. So lock your doors, turn off the lights, and get ready to experience the Airbnb stays that turned into absolute horrors. And don't forget to subscribe to Nightmare Hub if you're a true fan of horror stories. So let's get started. I've always loved traveling. The thrill of being somewhere new, sleeping in a place you've never been before, waking up to unfamiliar sounds. It's exciting. But sometimes, unfamiliar doesn't mean exciting. Sometimes it means terrifying. This is the story of a trip I'll never forget. My partner and I booked what seemed like the perfect Airbnb. Cozy, private, affordable. But what happened inside that house still keeps me awake at night. And it all started with a mirror. It was early autumn when we arrived. The leaves in the small town were shades of gold and red, crunching under the tires as we pulled into the gravel driveway. The cottage looked like something out of a postcard. White wood paneling, a little porch with a rocking chair, and ivy crawling up the sides. Inside, everything was neat and charming. Rustic furniture, a fireplace stacked with wood, and a faint smell of lavender. The host had even left a welcome basket on the table with wine and snacks. We were exhausted from the long drive, so we settled in quickly. My partner, Emma, claimed the couch with her book, and I wandered around exploring. There was one thing that stood out to me, though: the bathroom mirror. It was large, old-fashioned, with an ornate golden frame. The glass itself was slightly warped, like the kind of antique mirror you'd find in a haunted house movie. I remember staring into it for a long time, feeling uncomfortable. My reflection seemed just a little off. I shook it off, thinking I was just tired. That night, nothing seemed unusual at first. We had dinner, opened the wine, and dozed off in bed. But around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up. The room was freezing cold. I glanced around, confused, until I noticed a faint sound, like water running. The bathroom light was on. I thought maybe Emma had gotten up, but when I rolled over, she was still sound asleep beside me. Cautiously, I stepped out of bed and walked toward the bathroom. The shower was off. The sink was off. But the mirror was fogged up, as if someone had just stepped out of a hot shower. And there, written in the condensation with a finger, were 3 words: "Get out now." I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. "Emma," I whispered harshly, shaking her awake. She groggily sat up as I pointed to the bathroom. By the time she got up to look, the message had disappeared. The mirror was completely clear. She thought I was dreaming, maybe still half asleep, but I knew what I saw. We locked the bedroom door that night. The next morning, sunlight poured into the house. The tension of the night before felt almost silly. Emma teased me for being paranoid. We spent the day exploring town, eating at a little diner, shopping in antique stores. By evening, we were laughing again, enjoying our trip. For a while, I even forgot about the mirror. But the second night, things got worse. Much worse. Around midnight, I woke again. Not because of noise, but because of silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, pressing against your ears. The bathroom door was wide open, the light flickering. This time, the mirror wasn't just fogged. The entire surface was dripping wet, as though water was seeping out from the glass itself, and written across it in large smeared letters. I stumbled back, hitting the wall. Emma rushed over, finally seeing it for herself. She gasped, clutching my arm. We didn't know what to do. Was someone inside the house? Was this some sick prank from the host? I checked every room, every closet, even outside on the porch. Nothing. No signs of anyone. But when I came back inside, Emma was standing in front of the mirror, pale as death. "What?" I asked. She pointed at her reflection. Her reflection was smiling, but she wasn't. We left the bathroom, slamming the door shut. We tried to rationalize. Maybe the mirror was just old, maybe we were overtired, maybe it was some weird trick of the glass. But Emma swore she saw her reflection grin at her. A wide, unnatural grin. Neither of us slept that night. On the third night, we decided we'd had enough. We packed our bags and planned to leave at sunrise. But at exactly 3 a.m., a sound woke us both. It was humming, a low, eerie humming coming from the bathroom. Against every instinct, I opened the bedroom door. The bathroom light was glowing again. And this time, the mirror wasn't fogged or dripping. It was crystal clear. In it, we saw ourselves, but not quite. Our reflections were standing closer together than we were, heads tilted at unnatural angles. Their eyes dark, their mouths slowly curling into identical grins. Then, in unison, they lifted their hands and began to write on the inside of the mirror, as if the glass was a window. The words appeared backwards, but clear enough to read. Stay, forever. The bathroom door slammed shut on its own. We ran. We didn't even grab our things, just sprinted to the car, hearts hammering, and sped off into the night. The next day, I tried contacting the Airbnb host, demanding an explanation. The listing had been taken down, completely gone. We never got our stuff back. And to this day, whenever I catch myself looking too long into a mirror, I swear I see that smile, just waiting for me to look away. Most of us trust reviews when booking a place to stay. Hundreds of strangers vouching for a home, praising the comfort, the safety, the experience. But what if one review, just one, tried to warn you? This is the story of an Airbnb I wish I'd never stepped foot inside. And if I had taken that one review seriously, maybe I wouldn't still be having nightmares about what I saw in that basement. I was traveling alone for work, moving from city to city, and staying in hotels had gotten expensive. So I turned to Airbnb. That's when I found it. A beautiful old townhouse on the outskirts of a quiet neighborhood. It had nearly 5 stars, dozens of glowing reviews, all praising the host for being friendly and the house for being charming and cozy. But as I scrolled, one review stood out. It was buried between all the positive ones, written almost a year ago. It simply said, "Don't go into the basement." At first, I laughed. Maybe it was a joke, or maybe the basement was just cluttered or unsafe. Either way, I ignored it. I wish I hadn't. The host, a man in his late 50s named Richard, greeted me warmly. He was polite, helpful, maybe a little too friendly, but nothing alarming. He showed me around the place, the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom upstairs. When we passed a locked door near the back of the house, I casually asked what it was. "Oh, just storage," he replied quickly, almost rehearsed. Of course, I knew what was behind that door, the basement. That night, I tried to sleep. The house was quiet, except for one thing, faint noises from beneath the floor. It sounded like shifting, like furniture being dragged slowly across cement. I told myself it was just an old house settling, but deep down, I knew where the sounds were coming from. The second day passed uneventfully. I worked on my laptop, ate takeout, and avoided the strange feeling I had about the house. But that night, the noises came back, louder. This time, it wasn't dragging. It was tapping, slow, steady taps, like fingers drumming on a wall. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every muscle tense. And then, the tapping stopped. A whisper followed, so faint, I almost thought I imagined it. "Help me." My blood turned to ice. I didn't sleep at all that night. On the third morning, I decided to leave early, but curiosity gnawed at me. What if that review was more than a joke? What if someone really needed help? I couldn't ignore it. When Richard went out to run errands, I searched the house. It didn't take long to find a key hidden in a drawer. A small, rusted key that looked old. Hands shaking, I went to the basement door. It fit perfectly. The door creaked open, revealing stairs descending into complete darkness. The smell hit me first, damp, musty, with a sharp metallic tang. I used my phone flashlight and slowly stepped down. The basement was unfinished, cold concrete walls lined with shelves. But what made me stop dead in my tracks were the mattresses. 4 of them, thin, dirty, laid out on the floor like a shelter. Each had restraints bolted to the corners. Beside them were cameras, still recording. I stepped closer, horrified, and saw the screens on the monitors flickering. My heart dropped. The footage wasn't just old recordings. It was live. And on the screen, I saw myself, sleeping upstairs, in the bed. Panic surged through me. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping. The tapping sound started again, this time from the far wall. When I turned my flashlight toward it, I saw it. A small hatch door, locked with a heavy chain. And from behind it came muffled sobbing. "Please," a voice whispered, "don't let him find me." My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the phone. I wanted to open it, to help, but I froze. Because from upstairs, I heard the front door open. Richard was back. I scrambled up the stairs, quietly at first, then faster as fear overtook me. My foot hit the top step just as Richard appeared in the hallway. His warm smile was gone. His face was blank, eyes cold. "You shouldn't be down there," he said, his voice low. I didn't answer. I shoved past him, sprinted to the front door, and ran into the night. I didn't stop until I reached the main road, flagging down a passing car like a madman. I went to the police, of course, but when they searched the house, the basement was empty. No mattresses, no cameras, no hatch. The listing disappeared from Airbnb the very next day. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed one more night, if I hadn't ignored that single warning review. Now, whenever I book a place to stay, I read every review carefully, because sometimes one sentence can save your life. We trust Airbnb hosts to keep us safe, to give us a place to rest, to welcome us as guests. But sometimes, there are people in those houses who were never supposed to be forgotten. This is the story of a trip where one locked door revealed a secret so disturbing, I can never look at an Airbnb the same way again. It was a business trip. My company booked me a small Airbnb in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The house was bigger than I expected, 2 stories, white picket fence, and a cheerful garden out front. The host, a woman in her 40s named Diane, greeted me warmly. She seemed a little rehearsed, like she was forcing her friendliness. But I brushed it off. She gave me a tour. The kitchen, the living room, my bedroom upstairs. Then she pointed at a door under the staircase. "That's just storage," she said quickly. "Nothing you'll need in there." Her eyes lingered on it just a second too long. That night, after a long day of meetings, I came back to the house exhausted. Around midnight, I was woken by a faint sound. At first, I thought it was the pipes, a rhythmic clinking noise, metallic and steady. But then I realized it was coming from downstairs. From the storage door, I crept to the staircase, listening. The sound grew clearer, a chain rattling, followed by a low sob. "Please," a weak voice whispered. I froze, heart racing. But when I flicked on the light and approached the door, silence. Closets. We grow up fearing them as children, convinced that something is waiting inside. Most of us outgrow that fear, but maybe we shouldn't. This is the story of an Airbnb stay that began with strange noises from a closet and ended with the horrifying truth of what was really living inside. My friend Sarah and I planned a weekend getaway. We both needed a break from work and thought a quiet Airbnb would be the perfect escape. We found a small cabin in the woods. The listing looked great, simple, cozy, surrounded by trees, with a little balcony overlooking a creek. When we arrived, the host wasn't there, but they left us a key in a lockbox. The cabin was exactly as advertised, warm, rustic, with 2 bedrooms and a small fireplace. Felt safe, felt private. But that first night, something happened that neither of us could explain. We stayed up late playing cards and drinking wine, laughing until we were too tired to keep our eyes open. Sarah went to bed in the guest room and I took the master. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I woke up to a faint scratching sound. It was coming from the closet. At first, I thought it might be a raccoon or a mouse. The cabin was in the woods, after all. But the sound was deliberate, like fingernails dragging slowly down the inside of the door. I held my breath, staring at the closet. After a few minutes, the sound stopped. I convinced myself I was imagining it and went back to sleep. The next morning, I didn't mention it to Sarah. We spent the day hiking, enjoying the fresh air, and by night, the memory of the sound felt distant. But that night, it happened again. This time, the scratching was louder, and mixed in with it, I swore I heard breathing. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and whispered, "Hello!" The scratching stopped. Silence. Then a single, slow knock from inside the closet. I didn't sleep at all after that. In the morning, I told Sarah everything. She laughed it off, saying I was just spooking myself. But when I asked her if she'd heard anything in her room, she hesitated. Actually, she admitted, "I thought I heard footsteps in the hallway last night, but I figured it was you." Neither of us said it, but we were both uneasy. On the third night, Sarah suggested we sleep in the same room, just to ease our nerves. So we set up in the master bedroom together. Sometime after midnight, the scratching began again. We both froze. This time, it was unmistakable. Sharp, frantic scratching from inside the closet door. Sarah grabbed my hand, whispering, "What is that?" We stared as the door handle slowly turned. I leapt up, rushed forward, and pressed my weight against the door. Something on the other side was pushing back. Hard. We screamed, shoving a chair under the handle to keep it shut. The scratching turned into pounding, desperate and violent, until suddenly, it stopped. At sunrise, we decided we couldn't stay another night. But before leaving, I had to look. Hands trembling, I pulled the chair away and opened the closet. It was empty, just coats and an old suitcase. No trapdoors, no crawl space. But carved into the wood on the inside of the door, over and over again, were the words, "Don't let him out." We should have left right then. But we were foolish, convincing ourselves maybe it was just a prank left by the last guests. That night, we tried to sleep again. Around 3 a.m., Sarah woke me with a terrified whisper, "The closet, it's open." I turned and my stomach dropped. The door was wide open, swinging silently on its hinges. In the shadows of the room, we both saw it. A man, thin, pale, crouched low to the floor, eyes wide and unblinking. He was grinning, lips stretched too far across his face. "Shoo!" he whispered. "You'll wake them." Before we could move, he darted back into the closet and slammed the door shut. We didn't hesitate. We grabbed our bags, our keys, and bolted out of that cabin in the middle of the night. We didn't even lock the door behind us. When we finally reached the safety of a gas station, shaking and breathless, I pulled out my phone to check the Airbnb listing. It was gone, completely deleted. To this day, Sarah and I don't talk much about that trip. People laugh when we tell them. They say it must have been a dream, or maybe some lunatic squatter hiding in the house. But sometimes late at night, I hear it again. That slow, deliberate scratching from inside my closet. And I wonder if he ever really stayed behind. We trust Airbnb hosts to keep us safe, to give us a place to rest, to welcome us as guests. But sometimes, there are people in those houses who were never supposed to be forgotten. This is the story of a trip where one locked door revealed a secret so disturbing, I can never look at an Airbnb the same way again. It was a business trip. My company booked me a small Airbnb in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The house was bigger than I expected, 2 stories, white picket fence, and a cheerful garden out front. The host, a woman in her 40s named Diane, greeted me warmly. She seemed a little rehearsed, like she was forcing her friendliness. But I brushed it off. She gave me a tour. The kitchen, the living room, my bedroom upstairs. Then she pointed at a door under the staircase. "That's just storage," she said quickly. "Nothing you'll need in there." Her eyes lingered on it just a second too long. That night, after a long day of meetings, I came back to the house exhausted. Around midnight, I was woken by a faint sound. At first, I thought it was the pipes, a rhythmic clinking noise, metallic and steady. But then I realized it was coming from downstairs, from the storage door. I crept to the staircase, listening. The sound grew clearer, a chain rattling, followed by a low sob. "Please," a weak voice whispered. I froze, heart racing. But when I flicked on the light and approached the door, silence. The next morning, Diane was cheerful again, asking about my sleep, offering me breakfast. I wanted to ask about the noises, but something about her smile stopped me. I convinced myself it was a dream, stress, nothing more. But that night I heard it again. This time, the sound wasn't just chains. It was breathing, raspy, desperate, just on the other side of the door. I pressed my ear against the wood, every hair on my body standing on end. "Don't leave me here," a voice whispered, trembling. I staggered back, terrified. My first thought was to call the police. But what would I even say? That I heard a voice behind a locked storage door? Instead, I grabbed my phone and recorded the sound. When I played it back, though nothing, just silence. At breakfast, I studied Diane carefully. She looked tired, her smile stretched thinner than before. "Everything okay with your stay?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, except I thought I heard someone downstairs last night." Her fork froze midair. For a split second, her face was blank, cold. Then she smiled again. "Oh, it's probably just the house settling," she said. "This old place makes lots of noises." But I knew she was lying. That night, the noises grew unbearable. Crying, pleading, chains rattling violently. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to know. I grabbed a butter knife from the kitchen, pried at the lock, and after what felt like hours, the latch finally gave way. The door creaked open, releasing a wave of damp, sour air. At first, I saw nothing but darkness. Then, with my phone flashlight, I saw her. A woman, thin, pale, chained to the wall, her eyes sunken, her lips cracked. She flinched at the light, whispering, "He won't let me leave." Before I could move, the front door opened upstairs. Diane was home. The woman's eyes widened in terror. "Hide," she mouthed. Panicked, I shut the storage door and ran back upstairs, slipping into my room just as Diane's footsteps echoed down the hall. She paused outside my door. I held my breath. Then, softly, she whispered through the wood, "You shouldn't have opened that door." I didn't sleep. At dawn, I grabbed my things, tiptoed past the staircase, and fled the house. I didn't even look at Diane. I drove straight to the nearest police station and reported everything. But when they searched the house, the basement was empty. No woman, no chains, no sign of captivity at all. They told me I was probably overtired, imagining things. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I hear it again in my mind. The rattling chains, the desperate whisper. And I can't stop wondering, was she real? Or was I hearing the echo of someone Diane had already forgotten? Hotels and Airbnbs always talk about check-in and check-out times. Simple rules, harmless guidelines. But sometimes those times aren't just for convenience. They're warnings. This is the story of an Airbnb stay where a midnight wake-up call nearly cost me my life. I had been on the road for hours, driving through unfamiliar back roads to get to my Airbnb. By the time I arrived, it was nearly midnight. The house was a small, single-story bungalow on the edge of town. Cozy, plain, and quiet. The host wasn't there, but they'd left the key under the mat. Inside, it smelled faintly of pine and dust. The furniture looked outdated, but it was clean enough. I was too tired to care. I tossed my bags in the corner, crawled into bed, and passed out almost instantly. That's when the alarm went off. At exactly 3 a.m., a loud alarm blared from my phone. The problem was, I never set one. Groggy, I fumbled for the phone. On the screen was a calendar notification I didn't create. It read, "Checkout time." I sat there in the dark, staring at the glowing screen. My chest tightened with unease. Maybe it was a glitch, Maybe the host had somehow set up the Wi-Fi to send notifications? None of it made sense. I shut off the phone, told myself I was overtired, and went back to sleep. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had set that alarm for me. The next day passed without incident. I worked on my laptop, went out for dinner, and came back to the house at dusk. Again, I went to bed early. And again, at exactly 3 a.m., the alarm went off. This time, the message was different. It's time to leave. My hands went cold. I deleted the event, checked my phone settings, even turned on airplane mode. Still, the message had appeared. That night, I barely slept. The following morning, I noticed something strange. My bag, which I had left zipped, was open. My clothes were disturbed, folded differently than I left them. I told myself maybe I'd forgotten, maybe I had opened it without remembering. But deep down, I knew. Someone had been inside the house while I slept. I should have left then, but I was stubborn. I told myself I'd lock everything tight and stay up if I had to. That night, I double-checked every window and door. I kept my phone beside me, flashlight ready. Still, at 3 a.m., the alarm rang. The screen lit up with another message. Check out immediately. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, climbing the hallway toward my room. My heart hammered as I grabbed my phone, its flashlight cutting through the dark. The doorknob rattled. Then, in a deep, unfamiliar voice, someone whispered through the wood, "It's checkout time." I bolted, threw open the window, climbed out, and ran barefoot into the night. I didn't stop until I reached the main road, where a truck driver pulled over and helped me. The police investigated, of course, but when they searched the Airbnb, they found nothing unusual. No signs of forced entry, no strange devices on my phone, nothing. The listing vanished from the site a day later. And to this day, I still don't know who was in that house with me, or how they kept setting alarms on my phone. But whenever I book a place to stay now, I make sure of one thing. I never ever ignore checkout time. When you book an Airbnb, you expect keys, usually 1 or 2, nothing strange about that. But what if you found another key, one you weren't supposed to have? This is the story of a cabin trip with friends, where an extra key turned out to be the sign that someone was already inside waiting. There were 4 of us, me, my girlfriend Emily, and our 2 friends, Chris and Megan. We wanted a weekend getaway in the mountains, something to escape the noise of the city. The Airbnb listing showed a rustic log cabin with a wraparound porch and a fireplace, perfect for drinking, playing games, and maybe telling a few ghost stories by the fire. When we arrived, the air smelled like pine, crisp and cold. The cabin sat alone at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by dense forest. No neighbors for miles. The host had left us a note and 2 shiny brass keys in a little dish by the front door. But we didn't realize until later that there was already a 3rd key waiting for us upstairs. The first night was perfect. We cooked dinner, played cards, laughed, and drank too much wine. The fire crackled, filling the cabin with warmth. Eventually, Megan went upstairs to claim a bedroom. A few minutes later, she came back down with a puzzled look on her face. "Hey," she said, holding something small between her fingers. Why was there a key on the nightstand in my room? We all stared at it. It looked exactly like the ones the host had left us. Same brass, same size. Chris frowned. "That's weird." The listing said there were only 2. We shrugged it off. Maybe the host just left an extra by accident. None of us thought too much about it. But that night, while lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would a random extra key be sitting inside the house? Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of creaking floorboards above me. At first, I thought it was just Chris or Megan moving around, but the creaks were slow, methodical, almost like someone was pacing back and forth across the room. When I finally drifted back to sleep, I dreamed of keys, dozens of them jingling in the dark. The next morning, Emily mentioned something strange at breakfast. "I swear I locked the front door last night," she said, frowning. "But when I came down this morning, it was unlocked." Megan and Chris swore they hadn't touched it. We brushed it off. Maybe she had just forgotten. But the unease lingered. That afternoon, we went hiking. The woods felt endless, the silence almost suffocating. When we returned at dusk, the cabin felt colder, emptier. And that's when I noticed it. The extra key, the one Megan had found, was gone. We tore the place apart looking for it. Under the bed, between couch cushions, even outside on the porch. Nothing. Maybe one of us misplaced it, Chris said, though his voice lacked conviction. That night, we double-locked every door and window. Chris even wedged a chair under the front door handle just in case. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else had that missing key. At 3 a.m., I woke to a sound that froze my blood. The unmistakable sound of a key sliding into a lock. Very slowly, the front door handle turned. The chair groaned as the door pushed against it. And then, silence. None of us slept after that. We sat around the living room, pale and shaking, listening for any sound. At sunrise, we checked the front door. The lock showed fresh scratches around it, like someone had forced a key inside over and over until it worked. Chris wanted to leave immediately, but Megan argued. What if it was just the wind, or the host? Maybe they came by and left when they saw us here. But I saw the fear in her eyes. None of us believed what she was saying. We decided to stay one more night, but only because it was too late to pack up and drive down the mountain safely. That was our mistake. We tried to stick together, watching movies, keeping the lights on. Around midnight, exhaustion got the better of us, and one by one, we dozed off in the living room. I woke up to darkness. The fire was out. The first thing I noticed was that the front door was wide open. Cold wind rushed into the cabin. The second thing I noticed was the sound of breathing, slow, heavy, coming from the staircase. I turned my head, heart pounding. At the top of the stairs stood a man, thin, pale, holding something that gleamed in the moonlight, a brass key dangling from his fingers. He tilted his head and whispered, "Did you miss me?" Chaos erupted. Emily screamed. Chris grabbed the fire poker. Megan ran for the door. The man moved fast, far faster than I expected, charging down the stairs 2 at a time. We barely made it out, sprinting barefoot across the gravel drive to the car. Chris fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice. Behind us, the cabin door slammed shut. When we finally sped away, no one said a word. The next day, we reported everything to Airbnb, but when they checked with the host, she swore there were only 2 keys. The listing disappeared within a week. Sometimes I lie awake at night wondering, who was he? How long had he been in that cabin? And what would have happened if we hadn't woken up in time? Now, whenever I book a stay, I don't just check for hidden cameras or bad reviews. I count the keys. Airbnbs usually have little touches to make guests feel welcome. A basket of snacks, fresh flowers, a handwritten note. Those touches are meant to comfort you, but sometimes they're warnings. This is the story of a note I found the moment I entered an Airbnb. A note that made my blood run cold and marked the beginning of a nightmare I'll never forget. It was late afternoon when I arrived at the Airbnb. The house was tucked into a quiet suburban street, surrounded by tall hedges that blocked it from the road. The host had been polite but brief over email, giving me the key code and telling me she'd left a few supplies inside. The interior of the house was immaculate. Hardwood floors gleamed, the kitchen smelled faintly of lemon, and sunlight streamed through large windows. On the center of the bed in the master bedroom lay a small, folded piece of paper. I picked it up. It read, "I'm glad you're here. You look just like the last one." My hand froze. My mind scrambled. The last one? I didn't know what that meant. I called the host immediately. She answered cheerfully, "Oh, that note? I wrote that a long time ago for the previous guest. It must have slipped onto your bed by accident." I laughed nervously, unsure whether to believe her, but something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. That night, I tried to sleep, brushing the note from my mind, but as soon as the lights went out, I felt a presence. The house was silent, too silent. Every creak, every whisper of wind outside seemed amplified. At 2:30 a.m., I heard it. Faint footsteps on the hardwood upstairs. I live alone, and the host wasn't supposed to be coming back. I sat up, heart racing, and listened. The steps stopped right outside my bedroom door. The next day, I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was an animal in the attic or just the house settling. But the note kept replaying in my mind. You look just like the last one. Who was the last one? That night, the sounds returned. This time, more insistent. Footsteps pacing, slow then fast, like someone was circling the room. I turned on all the lights, grabbed my phone, and checked the door. Locked, no one inside. And then, a knock on the bedroom window. I jumped back. My heart felt like it would explode. Outside, no one was there, just the dark shadows of the backyard trees. By the third day, I was exhausted. Every little sound made me flinch. Every shadow looked like a person. I couldn't stop thinking about that note. I replayed the host's words in my mind. It must have slipped onto your bed by accident. But accidents don't write messages that reference the last one. I decided I'd look through old reviews, hoping to find a clue. And then I saw it. One review from a previous guest, written months ago. The host was fine, but I found a note on the bed. It said, "I'm glad you're here. You look just like the last one." I didn't stay the night. Something felt off. That night, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I stayed awake, waiting. Around midnight, I heard soft scratching. The walls, the ceiling, then footsteps again, deliberate, pacing toward my bedroom. I backed away from the bed, gripping my phone like a weapon. The note fluttered slightly, as if moved by an invisible hand. And then a whisper, so faint I barely caught it. "You shouldn't be here." I ran. I didn't stop to grab anything. Down the stairs, through the door, into the night. I didn't look back. The next day, I contacted Airbnb. The listing had disappeared. The host was unreachable. I never found out who the last guest was, or if they were still in that house. Sometimes, late at night, I see notes in my dreams. Notes with my name, folded neatly on a bed, waiting. And I can't shake the feeling that someone is watching, somewhere, smiling at the thought that I was just another guest, another last one. Sometimes the scariest things aren't loud. They aren't screams, they aren't crashing doors. Sometimes the scariest thing is silence. This is the story of an Airbnb stay where I realized that silence can hide something much worse than noise. Someone or something watching you without ever making a sound. I booked a small apartment in the city for a week. It was conveniently located near work, cheap, and had decent reviews. The host had left me a key in a lockbox and gave detailed instructions about the apartment. The place was cozy, a one-bedroom with an open kitchen and a small balcony. I moved in, unpacked, and everything seemed normal, until I started hearing it. The first night, I was working on my laptop in the living room. At around 11 p.m., I heard faint typing. I assumed it was a neighbor, the walls were thin, but then it stopped when I stopped typing. I listened more carefully, and it started again, almost perfectly in sync with my own keyboard clicks. I froze. Was someone else in the apartment? I checked every room. The bedroom, the bathroom, the balcony. No one. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a glitch in my keyboard? Maybe my laptop was picking up something weird in the apartment's wiring. That night, I stayed up late, waiting for the sound. Around 2:30 a.m., it started again. This time, slower, measured, intentional. I grabbed my phone flashlight and moved toward the bedroom. The bedroom was empty, the closet closed. Nothing, but the laptop was open, typing, by itself. On the screen, a single sentence appeared. "I see you." I sat frozen for what felt like hours, staring at the screen. My rational mind screamed that it must be a virus or a software glitch. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't alone. For the next few days, I barely slept. I didn't move around the apartment much. I left lights on, I double-checked the locks. I called the host to ask if anyone else had access. She assured me no one did. Yet every night, the typing came back. And sometimes, I felt something watching me from the corner of the room, just sitting, silent, waiting. On the third night, I was too scared to go to bed. I set up cameras with my phone in every corner of the apartment. 3 a.m., I watched in horror. A figure appeared on the balcony, shadowed, silent, not moving like a normal person. Then it slipped inside the apartment. I watched the footage later and saw it move like water, gliding across the floor without making a sound, appearing and disappearing, always behind me, always in the corners. When I turned around in the recording, it was in the bedroom, crouched, watching me. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my things, ready to leave immediately. But before I could open the door, I heard it again, typing. I swung my flashlight toward the laptop. The screen was blank. And then, from the darkness, a whisper. "Why are you leaving? We weren't done yet." I bolted, down the stairs, out the front door, into the street. I didn't look back. I reported the incident to Airbnb. The host insisted no one had access. But I don't need proof anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I hear faint typing in my own apartment, and I know it's not a computer. Sometimes you think you're booking the perfect getaway. You think you're staying in the house you saw in the photos. But what if you weren't? This is the story of a couple who checked into an Airbnb and realized they weren't in the right house. Emma and I were planning a romantic weekend getaway. We found a charming house online. 2 bedrooms, a fireplace, a large garden. Photos looked perfect. When we arrived, something felt off immediately. The layout didn't match the photos. The furniture was wrong, and the family photos on the walls, all the faces were blurred, as if someone had deliberately hidden them. We assumed maybe the host redecorated, but something deep inside told me this was wrong. The host arrived late afternoon, a tall, thin man with a forced smile. "You must be Emma and?" "Yes," we replied. "Perfect. Welcome to the house. Make yourselves at home." He left quickly, a little too quickly. That night, we tried to relax, but every sound felt amplified. The wind rattling windows, creaking floors, distant footsteps in rooms we weren't using. I told myself it was just the house settling. The next morning, we explored the neighborhood. Everything looked normal, but the more we looked around, the more it felt like the house didn't belong here. Returning that evening, the unease returned. At night, Emma was woken by soft whispers in the bedroom. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded. Something was definitely in the house. We found a locked room upstairs. The host said, "Storage. Don't go in." We didn't listen. Inside, we found strange things. Personal items that weren't ours, newspapers from years ago, and a wall covered in maps with pins on houses, including our apartment back in the city. Suddenly, it clicked. We weren't in the house we booked. We weren't anywhere safe. We tried to call the host. No answer. We packed everything frantically. Downstairs, the front door wouldn't open. It was locked from the outside. We smashed a window and climbed out. As we ran down the street, we saw the host standing in the doorway, watching. He didn't move, just smiled. We didn't stop until we reached a busy road. When we checked the original listing online, it had vanished. We reported it, but the police found nothing. Sometimes I wonder, were the photos ever real? Or had we been part of someone's plan all along? We live in a world of constant surveillance. Cameras are everywhere, but you expect them in public places, not inside the private sanctuary of your Airbnb. This is the story of a traveler who discovered that their privacy was an illusion, and that someone had been watching them the entire time. I had booked a small apartment in the city for a work trip. The listing seemed perfect, modern, clean, and in a quiet building. The host met me at the door, handed me the keys, and gave a quick tour. Everything seemed ordinary. I unpacked, prepared for a quiet evening, and set my laptop on the dining table. That's when I noticed something odd. The smoke detector in the kitchen was blinking in a strange pattern. I assumed it was low on battery, but something about it made me uneasy. I climbed on a chair and examined it closely. The cover had a small hole I hadn't noticed before, far too small for a sensor, but the perfect size for a lens. My stomach sank. Could it be a camera? I dismantled the detector carefully and found it. A tiny, hidden camera, wires running into the ceiling. My heart raced. Why would someone put a camera in a private rental? I checked the bedroom. No camera visible, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. I pulled out my laptop and noticed that my Wi-Fi network had an unfamiliar device connected. Its name was Random Letters, but it was active. That night, I tried to sleep. The apartment was quiet, but I couldn't stop thinking about the camera. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard a soft click. The camera's lens adjusted. My heart pounded. I grabbed a flashlight and traced the wiring, following it up into the attic space above the apartment. And then I heard it, a faint whisper through the wires. "Why did you touch my camera?" I backed away, shaking. The lights flickered. Every sound in the apartment seemed amplified. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, even my own heartbeat. I tried calling the host. No answer. I called Airbnb. The connection dropped. I realized I was completely alone, or at least I thought I was. The next evening, I decided to confront it. I set up my laptop to record any movement in the apartment using motion sensors. At 3 a.m., I woke to movement in the bedroom. Shadows shifted unnaturally. I shone my flashlight toward the ceiling. A figure crouched just above, manipulating the wires. Thin, pale, almost shadow-like, its eyes gleaming in the dim light. It whispered again, "Don't move. I like to watch." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my things, ran out the front door, and sprinted down the street, barefoot. I didn't stop until I reached a 24-hour diner. I called the police from there. When they investigated the apartment, the cameras were gone. No wires, no holes in the ceiling, nothing. The host's profile had vanished from Airbnb. Even now, months later, I can't shake it. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I see flashes of a small red light in the corner of my vision. And I wonder, was it really gone? Or am I still being watched?